stupidly decided I wanted to go to boarding school again for 10th grade because I wanted to be involved in sports. I hadn't been involved in sports that whole year while being homeschooled, with the exception of a few weekend football camp things at a school. Didn't make any great friends in boarding school in Thailand. It was in Chiang Mai, which is in northwestern Thailand. Was there for 1 year and then we were back to Canada. If you get the pattern right now, it's 4 years in Thailand, 1 year in Canada, 4 years in Thailand, and 1 year back in Canada. Once I was back to Canada, I was thrilled. I couldn't wait to meet John again. I still remember the day that we got to the same old house that we lived in Toronto. That's where we lived. I put on my rollerblades and I rollerbladed back to Jonathan's house. That same route that I had taken so many times in grade 6. Hundreds and hundreds of times. Straight to Jonathan's house. I remembered where it was. I could recognize it. I was listening to Third Eye Blind while I was rollerblading there. I loved Third Eye Blind that time. It felt so freeing. It felt so great. Knocking on that door, it was just so awesome. And then the awkward moment. Hi. It's me. You remember? Yeah. It's just pretty cool seeing him again. But we're not the same people anymore. What I found out with a lot of people I made friends with before, and we all ended up going back to school at the same place, most of us. I went to the high school most of them were at, is that a lot of them had already pretty involved social lives by that time. Jonathan, for one, had already had a big social group of friends, and it was obvious that he didn't have the time to spend with me like he had before, like I had hoped. It's just like, imagine leaving your wife for 4 years and coming back and saying, "Hey, I'm back," and trying to make things back to the way they were. It just doesn't happen that way, and I can totally understand why, Jonathan might not have been so friendly with me anymore. Maybe he still resented the fact that I left him 4 years ago, just as much as I resented having to leave him and having to leave so many people in my life. Jonathan and I hung out a bit, and we did catch up, but it wasn't time to hang out like before. And it was the same thing with most of the people that I had known, and a lot of them had changed a lot. Even Jonathan had changed a lot and was very different. I had changed a lot, obviously, but it was hard for me to realize that I was also one who had changed at the time. So that friendship never really rematerialized, and it was tragic for me. It was also tragic for me that I never really made a good friendship until near the end of the year, when on school strike, when the teachers were striking, and they had made a line outside the school in strike, and you couldn't break the line, and all the students had come to the school and they were standing outside wondering what was going to happen. It eventually was said that people could go into the school and sit and study and do just that, or it wouldn't hurt to just leave. I met somebody who was in my class that time, and he had a friend named, and altogether we decided to hang out that day, and it was really cool. And we went down to their apartment building and we played cards and we talked, and one of them's name was Rami. So Rami is this guy from Egypt, and this guy from Sergey had to move in his teens, and I don't think it was very easy for them to move. I think they were forced out of the country. Now I'm bleeping out his name because the thing is, he's quite shy on the internet. I'm not sure why. He doesn't like to be exposed on the internet, as far as I can remember. Once I put his picture on a look-alike kind of thing, and I showed him the link to see who he looked like, and he was quite pissed at me. I thought it was harmless at the time, but he took exception to that. So that's why I'm bleeping out his name. We hung out a lot and we had some good times, especially like to rollerblade just as much as I did. I love rollerblading in Canada. It's just a beautiful place to rollerblade. You can rollerblade down the sidewalks, and the temperatures are okay, unlike Thailand, where you can't really rollerblade very freely and can't go very many places. And I also made friends with this guy named Alan, who was also from a Chinese family. And it was, both of them happened very near the end of the school year. And it's very sad the way it happened like that, and didn't really have enough time to develop those relationships very well. Or maybe that would be a blessing in disguise. Had those relationships really been developed, it would have been a lot harder for them. And even for me at the time when I left, I didn't realize the impact it could have on those people, my friends. Obviously this time email became a very common thing, but if you've ever been through that situation where you're emailing a friend, it sort of becomes less and less frequent, and you just can't keep it up. It becomes this thing where it's just once a month, once a year sometimes, and you just write back and you feel really sheepish writing back and saying, I haven't heard from you for a while. I feel ashamed at not having been able to keep those relationships up, but also at the same time I blame not being able to have the intimacy of a face-to-face relationship, of being able to do something with that person, an activity, if you will. I think the internet doesn't really provide that right now. It provides a mode of communicating, but kind of like, it's even less personal than the phone, if you will. We weren't able to spend time together in the flesh, is what I'm saying, and not having that, I think really doesn't allow for a real intimate relationship to happen. Same thing kept happening again, it was a pattern, and I still didn't understand the severity and the tragedy it was to be losing that friend, because I didn't understand that I was losing that friend yet. I thought, oh great, you're still my friend, we're just far away, we'll see each other someday. Or I didn't understand that probably we might not see each other again someday, or when we do meet each other, it won't be the same. It won't be the same. Also, up to this point, it seemed to have a pattern where the people I related to the most were the people who were displaced from their homes. When you're displaced and you go to a new place, you kind of feel like you don't fit in. But in my case, I went to a new place, and then I moved back to my home country, and I found out the second time through that it wasn't really my home country anymore. I didn't relate to native-born Canadians very well. It was such a different wavelength that we were on, if you will. Such a different wavelength. I was on a very global wavelength mindset, and Canadians who lived in the same place most of their life had very different things on their mind, very different viewpoint than I did. I'm not saying theirs was worse or better than mine, but I'm just saying it was different. And because of that difference, it was very difficult for me to get close to those people. And people I got the most close to were probably the people that shared that pain and that feeling of not having the same home country, and not having a home country maybe even. We are the displaced, we're the misfits, we are, to some degree, rejects. It's the pain of being just plucked away from your home, that you return home and things are different. People aren't the same and you aren't the same as them. So I could have really become good friends with those three.